Hey guys, Tommy with Studio Sense here. Hope you're having an awesome day so far. Thanks for taking the time out to check out today's video. It is a fantastic fragrance that we're going to be talking about today, one of my all-time favorites, and one of the very few fragrances that I think every man should at least consider, if not own. What I'm talking about, of course, is the niche fragrance by Tom Ford, Noir Extreme. One of the best epic, well, I'm not going to go on here. Actually, after this brief intro reel, we'll dig into that fragrance, talk about it more in depth. Got that and more coming your way, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. Super glad that you're here today because we're talking about one of my all-time favorite fragrances. If you're not familiar with my channel, I talk mostly about designer fragrances. Designer fragrances are typically within the ballpark of everyone's kind of budget, you know, because they are less expensive than our niche fragrances. If you're not sure what niche fragrances are, besides looking it up later, I'll give you a very simplified definition, and that is fragrances that are outside of your typical budget. You know, when you think of a smaller group, you know, maybe even independent, although that's even a bit different than niche is in terms of labeling. Today I'm talking about a niche fragrance brand that is very close to designer in terms of its popularity and its scope, and that is Tom Ford, and in particular, Tom Ford Noir Extreme. Noir Extreme came out in 2015, so it's a 7-year-old fragrance. Let's look a little bit at the presentation itself. Noir Extreme, besides being a very striking looking presentation, a very cool bottle, it's got the TF cutout in the very top and then the dark plastic behind that. The atomizer is gold plastic, and then the body of the fragrance, of course, is dark glass. Tom Ford Noir Extreme on the front is embossed in gold lettering. Then on the very bottom, you've got a sticker label that is also in gold lettering. This is the 3.4 fluid ounce or 100 ml bottle. So the bottle is very stately, very classic. What about the fragrance itself? What about the notes? Let's talk a little bit about the notes that make up Tom Ford's Noir Extreme. Tom Ford's Noir Extreme features top notes of mandarin orange, neroli, saffron, cardamom, and nutmeg, with heart notes of coffee, mastic, rose, jasmine, and orange blossom, resting on a base of amber, sandalwood, and vanilla. Okay, so at its very heart, Tom Ford Noir Extreme is a gourmand fragrance. Now, for those of you out there that aren't super excited about sweet or gourmand or edible or foodie fragrances, don't worry, because this isn't your typical gourmand fragrance. In fact, I would have to say that Noir Extreme is a bit more of a sophisticated, and in fact, it's more like two fragrances in one. For one thing, Noir Extreme isn't overloaded with sweetness. It's neither intrusive or too sharp or too heavy with any particular note, nor is there anything in it that's so ethereal as to make it disappear in a matter of minutes, meaning that it doesn't perform well or doesn't last. So it strikes a super fine balance in not only the notes and how they portray themselves and come across, but in the actual performance. It's a near perfect juxtaposition between what's light and what's dark in gourmand fragrances, which makes it a signature frontrunner with some of the best fragrances out there. It's an intensely pleasant, lightly sweetened vanillic fragrance. It takes on this sophisticated masculine presence that's really hard to ignore. On the one hand, it's warm and inviting, and on the other hand, it's kind of cool and distant. It's got kind of a push-pull effect that's at once fascinating and captivating and makes you want to come back for more. Noir Extreme starts out completely unrelated with anything gourmand. It's got spicy sparks of lightly citric, faintly vegetal, and lightly floral. There's a pleasant powderiness to it that makes it feel like none of the combined notes are bumping into each other trying to vie for more attention. Neroli pays tribute to this effect, and saffron has its role to play as well. After a few moments, those opening sparks die down, but that floral presence begins to become a bit heavier while at the same time merging with something else. So the floral bearing or presence that the fragrance has kind of gets eliminated as time goes on into the heart specifically, which is unusual because the rose and the jasmine are in the heart, but they become less heavy and less substantial, but then they kind of take their position in the band, as it were, you know, like a drummer's in the back, you know, always in the back, so it's not super loud. So the rose and the jasmine kind of go to the background, but they're still there. They're still ever present. And what it makes way for is the sweet, the creamy, the decidedly gourmand. And that's when the fragrance takes its final kind of light gourmand, but sophisticated gourmand form. A kulfi is a traditional Indian ice cream dessert, kind of a frozen milk kind of thing. Cardamom is and a little bit of saffron is garnished with it sometimes. I've never had it, I've never made it, so I couldn't tell you much about it. It's very sweet, very creamy, cardamom, vanilla with just a hint of spice, like that saffron garnish. So the fragrant crown that finally rests on this kingly fragrance's head is that of amber, sandalwood, and vanilla. That is the base of the fragrance, and that's pretty much where the kind of the overall tonal quality of the fragrance stays when it dries down. All the preceding notes in the fragrance lead up to this perfectly seamlessly blended handoff or transition from the open to the lightly powdery floral freshet into the heart of floral notes and into the more familiar gourmand, sweet, creamy vanilla territory. Tom Ford's Noir Extreme can be worn in any kind of weather. It doesn't really matter. It's very versatile. However, it is best maximized or utilized in cooler weather from fall to winter, even the early days of spring. The only time I wouldn't recommend it, just like any gourmand fragrance, is in the super hot weather. It's got some weight to it, and that creates the potential to kind of overload someone, including yourself, with the fragrance. In terms of when to wear the fragrance, any and all occasions except the very close-knit. If you're going to be stuck in a phone booth or a boxcar with somebody, that's the only time I wouldn't recommend wearing it. It is definitely office safe. 3 or 4 shots of this fragrance and you're pretty much done for the day. I get a good solid 10 hours out of this fragrance. I say solid because it's not like 7 hours one day and 12 hours the next. It performs pretty much the same every time. So the performance is definitely there in Noir Extreme. Now about the price, and that's where a lot of people kind of put on the brakes because it is a niche fragrance and it's got a niche price on it, but it's not super bad. It is at discounters. Price can definitely alienate you from a fragrance, but that's not the case with Noir Extreme. I feel like it's one of the very few niche fragrances that's worth its weight in currency. I feel like it's a fragrance that every discerning man should, if not own, then at least try. You owe it to yourself, specifically if you like men's fragrance, to try it out. My final word on Tom Ford's Noir Extreme is that it is an extremely epic fragrance to own, to wear, to smell on someone, and to smell on yourself. It's only 7 years old, so it's still relatively young in the world of men's fragrance in an industry that's ever expanding, but I feel like it's set a precedent. Tom Ford's got some great fragrances out there. You know, a lot of people would say, well, Tobacco Vanille is better fragrance than this. And I mean, you know, it's a close run. There's a lot of good Tom Ford fragrances out there, but this one to me carries itself in such a super versatile way that I feel like it can be used in more scenarios and more situations, and therefore you can maximize your return on your investment, because any good niche fragrance is just that, an investment. If you own Tom Ford Noir Extreme, I would love to hear what your opinion is about the fragrance, what your favorite aspects are, if you don't like it, why you don't like it, or if you prefer the Tom Ford Noir Extreme Parfum, the gold bottle that's recently released, if you like that better, because that's been a little bit divisive for a lot of people. It smells not as similar as some would have hoped to the original Noir and Noir Extreme. Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on this fragrance or another Tom Ford fragrance that you feel is better in your opinion. Thanks so much though for stopping by. As always, thank you so much for your support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow.